The first mistake Clara Whitmore made was believing the storm would ease before nightfall. The second was thinking the mountains cared whether she lived or died. By the time the sun slipped behind the Colorado peaks, the snow had swallowed the world, and Clara knew with a sharp, sinking certainty that she might not survive to see another dawn. She forced her frozen boots through the knee-deep drifts, each step sending a bolt of agony up her legs. Her dress, once neat and pressed for schoolhouse lessons, hung in heavy wet folds that slapped against her shins like iron chains. She hugged her leather satchel tight to her chest, the only warmth she had left. Inside those papers lay proof, real, dangerous proof, that powerful men had lied, stolen land, and left innocent families dead. 3 people had already been murdered for what she carried. She was trying desperately not to become the 4th. The wind howled through the tall pines like a warning. Clara stopped, breath shaking in the cold. She listened for hoofbeats, for men's voices, for the soft metallic sound of a rifle being cocked. Nothing. Just the roar of the storm and the wild thud of her own heartbeat. She had been running for 2 days, ever since she watched the Cain gang murder the mayor and his deputies through the cracks in the schoolhouse floorboards. She could still hear Josiah Cain's voice, low, calm, deadly. "Where are the papers, old man?" The mayor hadn't answered fast enough. Clara had bitten down on her own hand to stop herself from screaming as blood dripped through the boards inches from her face. She'd waited until the gang rode off, then fled with the only thing the mayor died trying to protect. Now each time the wind moaned through the trees, Clara's knees buckled, expecting gunfire behind her. Her fingers were numb, her lips raw from the cold. She had no food, no horse, no real plan. Only hope, a small, stubborn ember that refused to go out. She stumbled against a pine tree and leaned her head against the rough bark, trying to steady her breath. Her vision swam. The world tilted. Somewhere behind her, a branch snapped. She jerked upright, panic exploding through her shaking limbs. "Please, not now," she whispered. Her legs could barely hold her weight. The slope ahead dropped sharply into a narrow valley, and before she could stop herself, she slipped. Snow and rocks tore at her as she slid down the incline, landing hard on her side. For a moment, she didn't move. She wasn't sure she could. Then she turned her head and saw the thin silver line of a frozen stream running through the valley. If she could follow it west, she might reach Cedar Falls. If she reached Cedar Falls, she might find a federal marshal. She might survive long enough to hand over the truth. She crawled to her feet, hands shaking violently. The cold bit deep, stealing feeling from her fingers, her toes, her face. Snowflakes clung to her lashes like tiny stars. She forced herself to step onto the ice, hoping it would cover her tracks. Every movement hurt. Her toes felt like fire and ice all at once. Her dress was torn from the fall. Her breath came shallow and fast. The storm tightened around her, pushing her toward the edge of her strength. Soon she could hardly tell sky from ground. "Keep moving," she told herself. "Just a little farther." But her body was done listening. She reached a small clearing, looked up at the swirling sky, and fell to her knees. The satchel slipped from her numb fingers and landed in the snow beside her. Clara tried to reach for it. Her hand didn't move. Tears filled her eyes, the warmth turning instantly to ice on her cheeks. "Not like this," she whispered. "Not when I'm so close." The cold wrapped around her like a blanket. A dangerous warmth spread through her limbs, the kind that meant the end was near. She curled against a large boulder, trying to shield herself from the wind, but her body was shutting down. Her breath grew slow. Her vision faded to white. Then the sound came, a heavy thud against the snow. At first she thought it was her imagination. Then another sound. A deep, rough voice cutting through the storm. What in God's name? Bootsteps crunched closer. Heavy, sure, and unhurried. A man's shadow blocked the wind. Clara's eyes fluttered weakly open, and she saw him. A broad-shouldered figure with a thick coat, snow-dusted beard, and eyes sharp as a wolf's in winter. A mountain man. Her lips barely moved. "Please don't kill me." She tried to rise, failed, and reached for him in raw, frantic survival. "I'll warm your bed," she gasped, the words falling out without thought. "I'll do anything. Just don't leave me out here." The man stared at her, shocked at her plea, at the fear in her voice, at the desperation only someone cornered by death could hold. He lifted her easily, like she weighed nothing. "You're half frozen," he said. "Save your breath." The last thing Clara felt before darkness claimed her was the warmth of his chest and the steady beat of a heart far stronger than her fading own. And for the first time in 2 days, she believed she might live. Clara woke to the soft crackle of firewood and the faint smell of coffee. For a moment she didn't move. She didn't know where she was, or if the danger had followed her into whatever place she had been brought to. Then warmth seeped into her bones, and she realized she was lying on a bed, an actual bed, covered in thick furs softer than anything she had ever touched. She blinked, disoriented. Her vision slowly cleared. A cabin, log walls, a stone hearth, a table stacked with tools, a rack of rifles lined neatly along one wall, and a man, broad-shouldered, rough, quiet, moving around the fire like he belonged to it. The mountain man. He glanced back when he felt her watching. His dark hair was tied at the neck, a long scar cut across his jaw. His eyes were gray, steady, unreadable. "You're awake." Clara struggled to sit up. Pain shot through her legs, and she gasped. He crossed the room in 2 strides and steadied her with one hand, careful but strong. "Easy," he said. "Your feet are frostbit. You're lucky you kept your toes." Clara swallowed hard. Did I? "Died on my porch," he said bluntly. "Would have frozen there if you'd arrived an hour later." She shivered and pulled the furs tighter. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be a burden." He lifted one eyebrow at that. "You weren't a burden. You were nearly a corpse." She looked down, ashamed. "I didn't know where else to go." He poured a cup of hot coffee and handed it to her. His hands were large, scarred, but gentle. She wrapped her own trembling fingers around the tin cup, the warmth nearly making her cry. "I'm Clara Whitmore," she said softly. He didn't answer right away. Then, Bear Mallister. The name suited him. Large, silent, dangerous-looking, yet something about him felt steady, dependable, even safe, in a strange way. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered. "I didn't save you," he replied. "I just pulled you out of the snow. Living or dying from here on is up to you." His words were harsh, but not unkind. He turned away and added wood to the fire. Clara watched him move, strong, quiet, controlled, like someone who lived with danger as easily as other men lived with neighbors. She hesitated, then asked, "Why did you bring me inside?" "You didn't have to." He paused, his back to her. His shoulders tensed. "You offered to warm my bed," he said in a low voice. "Figured you weren't thinking straight." Her face burned. She covered her mouth, mortified. I was terrified. I wasn't myself." "I know," Bear said. "No one talks sense when death is reaching for them." He returned to the table and sat heavily in a chair facing her, studying her with those sharp gray eyes. "You said you were running from men," he said. "Who? And why?" Clara's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Fear flickered across her face. She looked toward her satchel, still sitting near the fire, untouched. "Is that yours?" Bear asked. She nodded. "Those papers. Men killed for them. They'll kill again. They're coming for me." Something shifted in his expression. Not fear. He didn't seem like a man who feared anything, but awareness. Caution. "How many?" he asked. "How far behind?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But they won't stop." Bear leaned back, crossing his arms. His gaze hardened. "You should have gone east," he said. "Gone home." "I can't," Clara said. "Not after what I saw." She told him everything. The murders, the forged land deeds, the stolen property, the mayor's plea to get the truth to a federal marshal, the children who'd lost their families, the names of those involved, Cain, his gang, and others far more powerful. Bear listened without interrupting, face like stone, but his jaw flexed when she mentioned certain names. Thornton, land theft, dead families, army signatures. You're trying to fight something bigger than you, he finally said. You won't survive it. I have to try, Clara said. And if trying gets you killed? Bear asked. She lifted her chin, her voice steady, even though her hand shook. Then at least I will have done the right thing. Bear stared at her a long moment. You think truth matters in a place like this? He asked quietly. It has to, Clara said. He looked away, as if the answer hurt. Then,
a sudden sound outside broke the silence.
A heavy thud. Bear stiffened instantly. He moved to the window with the reflexes of a soldier. Clara held her breath. He looked out. Nothing, but the forest was too quiet. He grabbed his rifle, checked the door bar, and blew out the lantern. What is it? Clara whispered. Trouble, Bear said. Get away from the windows. Clara's heart pounded as she crawled back to the bed, gripping the furs tight. Bear loaded his rifle with steady hands. They found us, he said. Before she could speak, a voice boomed from outside, calm, cold, and unmistakable. Miss Whitmore, we know you're in there. Clara's blood turned to ice. Bear's eyes narrowed. Cain's gang had arrived. Cain's voice echoed through the trees, smooth and sharp like a knife sliding from its sheath. Clara felt her heartbeat hammering in her throat as she pulled the furs closer, trying to make herself small. Bear didn't move from the window. He stood like a stone statue, shoulders squared, rifle ready. Stay low, he murmured, and stay quiet. Clara nodded, barely breathing. Outside, Cain called again, louder this time. Send the girl out, Mallister. We only need her. You can walk away. No reason for you to die over someone else's problem. Bear didn't answer. He didn't blink. Clara whispered, You should let me go. Bear shot her a look sharp enough to freeze the fire. No. He's right, Clara said, voice trembling. They want me. You shouldn't die because of something I started. I decide what I'd die for, Bear replied. A round of laughter came from the shadows beyond the cabin walls. Come on, Mallister, Cain taunted. We know a half-frozen schoolteacher didn't get far without help. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Bear stepped away from the window and moved to Clara, placing a revolver in her shaking hands. Point and squeeze, he said softly. If anyone breaks through that door, you shoot. Clara swallowed hard. I'm not sure I can. You can, he said. The cabin shook with the first gunshot. A second followed, splintering wood from the shutters. Bear yanked Clara behind the side wall, shielding her with his body as bullets thudded into the logs. The smell of smoke drifted in through the gaps. They're trying to burn us out, Bear muttered. We're not staying here. He darted to the rug in the center of the room and threw it aside, revealing a square trapdoor hidden beneath. Clara stared. What is that? An escape tunnel, Bear said. Get in. Now. Another shot smashed through the window, spraying them with splinters. Clara screamed and Bear grabbed her, pulling her down the ladder into the darkness. He dropped into the cramped space after her and slammed the trapdoor shut just as boots thundered across the porch. The tunnel sloped forward into cold earth, the smell of dirt filling their lungs. Bear pushed Clara ahead of him, guiding her with one hand, rifle in the other. The ceiling was low. They crawled. Dirt fell into Clara's hair. Her breath came shallow and fast. Bear, she whispered, panic cracking her voice.
I can't. You can, he said.
Keep going. Above them, Cain's men stormed the cabin. They heard muffled shouting, crashing, the roar of fire catching on wood. Heat seeped downward, faint but growing. Clara pushed forward, her fingers numb, her legs trembling. Finally, they reached the tunnel's end. Bear shoved up the wooden hatch, and snow spilled through. He climbed out first, then pulled Clara up into the daylight. Fresh air hit her lungs like a blessing. Behind them, Bear's cabin burned, flames rising through the roof, painting orange light across the snow. The heat of it melted the drifting flakes in the air. They ran. Clara's injured feet stumbled, but Bear caught her around the waist and half-carried her through the deep drifts. Gunshots cracked behind them. Men shouted. Horses neighed. The chase had begun. Bear, Clara gasped, clutching her satchel. They're gaining on us. I know. Then leave me, please. You can escape if you're not carrying. Clara, stop! Bear growled. You think I saved someone just to drop them in the snow? Not happening. They reached the edge of a ravine. Bear grabbed Clara's hand. We go down. It's steep. Exactly. Clara clung to him as he slid down the icy slope, snow exploding around them. When they reached the bottom, he didn't stop. They ran deeper into the narrow pass where tall cliffs rose on both sides. Hoofbeats thundered above on the rim. Cain's voice rolled down like a dark omen. You can't run forever, Mallister. Give her to me, and I'll give you a quick death. Bear didn't look up. He talks too much. Clara almost laughed. Almost, if she hadn't been terrified. The ravine opened into a wide box canyon. Bear cursed under his breath. No way out. Clara's voice trembled. Then this is it. Bear set her behind a boulder and checked his last rounds of ammunition. It won't be, he said. Not if we make them bleed for every step. The first attackers rushed in. Bear fired, dropping one, then another. Clara held her revolver with both hands, shaking but ready. Then the sound changed. A whistle, a cry, a shout that didn't belong to Cain's gang. Bear's head snapped up. From the cliffs above, shapes appeared. Fast, silent, sure. Cheyenne warriors. A dozen of them. They descended the slopes with the speed of mountain cats, arrows flying, rifles cracking. Cain's men turned, confused, overwhelmed. The canyon exploded with chaos. Clara watched in stunned disbelief. Bear. Who are they? Bear lowered his rifle in shock as one of the warriors approached. A man with braided hair and fierce, steady eyes. Running wolf, Bear breathed. The warrior nodded. We remember, Bear Mallister. A debt paid today. The Cheyenne had come because Bear had once saved their children from a massacre. Clara stared at him, understanding washing over her like warm water. You saved them, she whispered. Years ago. That's why they came. Bear didn't answer. He didn't need to. Cain's gang fell quickly, outmatched from both sides. When it was over, snow lay thick with broken rifles and wounded men. Cain himself was dragged forward, bleeding but alive. He glared at Clara as if she were the one holding him down. This doesn't change anything, he spat. Thornton will hunt you both. The truth won't matter. Clara stepped forward, clutching her satchel. It matters to me, she said, and to everyone who died for it. Bear stood behind her, tall and unmoving. Running Wolf spoke. Your fight is not over, but you are not alone. The Cheyenne helped them onto horses. Clara leaned weakly against Bear, her head resting on his chest as they rode toward safety. You did it, she whispered. You saved us. Bear wrapped an arm around her, holding her steady. David with brethren. No, he said quietly. We saved each other. The snow-glazed mountains stretched before them, glowing in the late light. The storm had passed. The danger had not. But for the first time, Clara felt something stronger than fear. Hope.